Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Real World Entrepreneurship Podcast. My name's Alan and currently I work advising growth businesses in Scotland and the UK. Prior to that, I spent 20 years working in marketing. I discovered the cancer and set up a digital media business that operated in 70 countries around the world.
And my name is Bhairav. I'm the Managing Director of Atom Ventures and Atom CTO. We currently help small businesses with their tech challenges. And before I founded Atom Ventures, I was part of the Big Four and then ended up being a CTO for a Forbes FinTech 50 business. And now we are part of the Real World Entrepreneurship Podcast.
In this episode, we're going to continue our series of top 10 things that people need to know when starting a business. And today, we're going to focus on the top 10 things we think businesses need to know when hiring their first member of staff. So, Bhairav, where do we start?
Well, I guess the first question is, right, why do we feel that this is an important topic, right? So why do we feel it's important to know about hiring? And I can give a little bit of my own personal background. When we were starting Aztec, we actually hired 20 people on day one, and that rapidly went to 40. Then we went to globally 60, 65, 70. And the guys the founders of that company had never really run a business before. And obviously I had been involved in business and consulting and setting up companies. So I understood the kind of pains that you have with hiring, but they didn't. And when you automatically hire 20 people, but know nothing about hiring, it becomes chaotic.
Yeah.
So I think the things that we're going to talk about today are very important for anyone who's thinking of really, of starting to hire, well, even their first hire, right? There's a bunch of stuff that you need to know. So,
well, certainly in my experience, it is one of the most stressful things that any early stage business does. Often they are terrified about hiring their first member of staff.
Yeah, because you're doubling the headcount, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably the most important hire that you'll make.
Absolutely.
So I'm just, so as we say, first hire is the hardest. And it's I think you and I have discussed this before, right? Going from 100 to 150 is probably easier than going from 1 to 2 or 1 to 5, because that's
massively easier. Massively easier.
Because it really it changes the culture of your business, right? You've gone from someone who's doing everything now and having to delegate. And I think that's where people find the greatest difficulty, right? They find it very difficult to delegate things to other people. Yeah.
So if your first hire is your hardest, what was your advice on how to make that first hire?
So I think from my point of view, you've got to know what you want. You've got to really understand what you want from a person who's coming on board, but understanding what you really need that person to be doing. So that first hire doesn't have to be a huge hire. It doesn't have to be, okay, I'm the CEO of a company, I need to find a COO or CTO. It could just be someone who's going to help you with some daily tasks, right? But you've got to really understand and be honest about the things that you need and actually convey that to the person that you're hiring. Because I think that a lot of times people will make that first hire thinking that person can start automatically doing the things that you're doing.
That's interesting, because one of the dilemmas I see businesses or startups having, and it's not always 1 going to 2, it might be 2 or 3 going to 3 or 4, but as that first person that comes in. And I think there's often a feeling like we're hiring a co-founder, and sometimes that is the last thing they need. What they need is to bring in someone who can free up time in the founders to be more founder-like and less admin and less process and less organizational. So it may actually be bringing in a relatively, I don't want to say junior, but a member of staff that will not sit in the boardroom table.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in many ways, I think first hire I think an important first hire for a founder, especially if you're a solopreneur, is someone who could take away the things from you that don't bring value. So do the things that you do that aren't bringing value to your business.
Absolutely. And that leads on to point number 3, which is about being clear right from the get-go about how you want the organization to work, your business to work, how you operate, what your processes are, how you like to treat people and be treated. And this is as much about really early on establishing culture within the business.
Definitely. And so we're going through this at the moment with Atom, and we're going through an interesting growth phase. So we've kind of doubled, almost trebling the size of the team. And we're working with a guy called Anthony Vaughan. So this is a shout out to him. He's been amazing at helping us understand how we need to prepare ourselves for that set of growth phase. Because one of the things he keeps saying to us is that people who are coming on board onto a fast moving ship need to understand what they're getting themselves into. So you've got to really be very clear as to what is your headspace right now? Where's your mindset? Do you need people who are going to come in and be able to just start work with a little direction? Or are you expecting people to come in with ideas and give you the ability to challenge what you're doing? And if it's the latter, do you actually be honest with yourself and say, do you actually have the headspace to deal with someone who's going to come in and challenge you? Because simply because you're doing so many different things as you're growing, do you really need someone else to come in and do that? Or do you just want someone to say, here's something?
Does that make it hard then not to just end up with a bunch of yes men around you or yes women around you if you don't want to be challenged?
I think it's not necessarily about not wanting to be challenged. I think it's a question about understanding whether you are in that mental headspace to listen to what people are saying. Because it is the case that, I mean, I hire people and I want them all to give me new ideas and fresh ideas. But sometimes I just need them to get on and do stuff and say, yes, it's nice that you've got this idea, but go and do this thing and I'll listen to that later. But that in my head is, yes, I'm listening to them and I'm understanding that they've got new ideas, but for them, it might just be a rejection. Do you see what I mean? So,
well, I do, but does that not really end up with the potential of stymieing the opportunity for development? Because you're asking people, not you, the entrepreneur would be bringing in people that can work with them rather than bringing in people who can stimulate and challenge and drive the business.
So I think so you're missing the point slightly there, this is where Anthony's much more articulate on this than I am. But what he's saying is that, yes, you can articulate to the person that's coming on board saying, yes, I like to be challenged. I want new ideas, but for the next 3 months, I'm not going to be able to listen to them.
Yeah. Well, and we've all worked with that. And I think one of the joys of a great colleagues or a great fit is when you know when to challenge and when you know just to shut up and get on with it.
Yeah. And I think it's the thing is that people, he makes a very, very, very good point, because what he's saying is that you've got to be very upfront with people about your culture and how you work, so that they know that, yes, today I'm not listening to your idea, but I'll put it on the pile and I'll get to it in 3 months. It doesn't mean I'm not interested in your idea. It just means I'm not going to be able to handle it today. So it doesn't mean I don't have to hire that person, but that person's got to know that if I ignore you for 3 months, that's not because I'm ignoring you and your ideas. So that's basically where I think that is. And I think that's very, very interesting, because I don't think any company I've ever been hired into has ever really explained the situation that they're in. I mean, as you get more senior, you kind of figure it out for yourself, right? So when someone asks you to be the third employee at a startup that's raised 12 million, you've got to figure out pretty quickly that is going to be a massively fast journey.
Kind of running in that one.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think once you're the 30th or 20th employee in that person needs to be explained that, hey, we're on this journey, it's moving fast. We look like a big team now, but that team's only been together for like 3 months. So we're still gelling. So I think that's what a lot of people don't really do. They're not very honest about how they work, because a lot of companies just talk about, yeah, we're blue sky thinking, we give you this, your ping pong table, you're getting all that kind of crap.
And nothing ever gets done because everybody's too busy thinking and not doing.
Well, also they don't really give a shit, right? So it's all lip service to the whole idea that, well, yes, we listen, we're open, we're inclusive, but really they don't care, because ultimately you're such a small cog. And
see, when you're in a small, when you're starting out, your business is small. Is it hard to find the right people? There's so many people out there. So many people want to start work for dynamic, exciting businesses. Surely it must be really easy to go and find them.
You think so, right? And again, this is something that we've been going through. You'd think that we're hiring developers, and the world is now full of developers. There's billions of them out there, right? And you'd think it would be easy to find them, but it isn't. And it will take you a long time to find the right person, and you've got to be prepared for that. And I think the thing is, you've got to be prepared for the craziness of the journey. I mean, it's the practicalities of the situation. You're going to have people who don't bother turning up to interviews. You're going to have people who turn up that just are totally, what they say on the CV is not what they've done. And I think that you've got to be prepared that it's going to be a long haul. You're not going to get someone tomorrow. It'll take 6 months. I mean, when you started Team Rock, how long did it take you to find the first set of people? Because I know there was a group of you to begin with.
Well, the bizarre thing there, that unusual circumstances there was we set up a business with 4 of us who fell together by accident, because we all happened to be in the same place at the same time. And what I mean by that was we were all working associated with our business, and it was naturally the 4 of us would say, well, we need all of us to make this happen. So one might say we went from 0 to 4 in a flash, but that was really the founders. But we then bought a business and then transformed it. So we went from 4 to 70 in a signature. And that is not normal. So I really don't want to get too much into that. But we had a big issue around culture and fit, and aligning expectations, and going into a business that had been operating for 25 years, and then saying there's a new kid in town and you are not the business you were. We're going to do something brand new here.
So
I think what's more relevant is when I worked in marketing and advertising, and I wasn't involved at the beginning of that business, but I was involved when we had, less than 20 staff. And it was terrifying. When we took a department and turned it from account management from 3 into 4, that was, oh my Lord, if this doesn't work, we are in all sorts of trouble. And I think this might lead on to the next point we have, which is accepting that you won't get it right all the time. And, my anecdote back to that is another great hair moment up here. I interviewed a girl. She was outstanding in her interview. Absolutely gold. I honestly thought I'd made the hire of all hires. I had a colleague interview as well, and he said, she is brilliant. She lasted 12 weeks. It was like a different human being came into the business. But thankfully at that point, and I think this is one of the things you need to know when you are hiring, there will not all be good hires. And the earlier you recognize it, and the earlier you remedy your mistake, the quicker you can move on. And frankly, the fairer it is for both parties. Your business and the person is not going to be part of it in the long term.
So do you believe in giving second chances?
You do believe.
Do you believe? Do you believe in giving?
Oh, absolutely. But after 12 weeks of somebody culturally just not fitting, a great story was, this was a sort of middleweight member of staff who sat in a client meeting and criticised our managing director. And you thought, if you can't get that, there is limited scope for developing you in this business, because you will never fit.
So how do you know that the person is actually the wrong person, in the sense that it may well be that you're not managing them correctly or playing to their strengths? It may be you didn't give them a chance, right? That they turned up, you expected a whole bunch of stuff from them, they weren't able to deliver, but you didn't actually explain to them what you needed to.
Well, I think we were pretty clear at the beginning of in the recruitment process as to what the role involved and what the person was required to bring to the role. And we also explained the development that we would expect. And you know, this was a competitive process. It wasn't like I interviewed one person and that was it. Of all the people I interviewed in that process, she was the absolute shining light in terms of the CV she brought, in terms of the work that she'd done before, in terms of, and you know, there's an awful lot out there about how to interview effectively. And I've sat on both sides of that, from a process that was governed by HR and had a range of set questions, through to, frankly, my preferred model, which is just talk to the person and have a conversation, and then probe them on the technical aspects. But at the end of the day, you're hiring a person. So with this one, all of that went brilliantly. But when she came into the business, yes, she may have been in the room when all the things were happening that we required and was able to articulate them in the interview, but she patently didn't have the level of competency that we had expected. But even more important, she was proving really difficult to develop. And after a period of 12 weeks, she's taken nothing on board. Well, no further problem. You know, believe me, we could do a podcast of faux pas that I have made along the way that my boss, when we went out to meeting, said, right, let's not do that again. And I learned the lesson big style. But this one was never moving forward. And, you know, I've accepted now that probably of all the hires I've made, and it's not that many really, maybe 50 people, a quarter were excellent. 50% did the job and 25% were disasters. And I hired everyone because I thought it'd be great.
I think so. That it's interesting those statistics you lay out for your own path, because I think a lot of the times, especially when I'm hiring, you have great expectations for people, and you think that you can bring them into an environment where we are quite nurturing and we are able to help people develop, and you think they'll thrive, but actually a lot of people don't really care, right? A lot of people just want to go into work, get paid, go home, and go live their life, and the work is just there for them to be able to live, which is obviously the right attitude, right? You should, life shouldn't take over. However, you should have some sort of enjoyment in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's an interesting one as to figuring out how do you know the motivations of people before they join. And I think one of the things, again, talking about this guy, Anthony Vaughan from E1B2, so I give him another shout out, he makes a good point of, you don't want lots of people wanting to work for you. You want a certain set of people that want to work for you, because you want to make sure you find those guys, and you need to speak to those guys. You need to do whatever you do with your hiring has to be talking to those small set of people, because you don't want, and you've got to be very clear as to, again, going back to the being about your needs and open about how you work, is that you've got to be really, really clear that this is what you're getting yourself into. Don't join us if you don't fit into that culture or that mindset. So
and that's about fit, isn't it? That she may well, and honestly, I don't know what happened after. She may well have gone on to great success when she found a good fit, but her business was not a good fit. And you know what? That doesn't mean, maybe I'm looking at what we've said here, except you hire the wrong people. Except you hire the wrong people for your business at this time. Because they may be the right people at another time, or they may be the right people for another business. But please don't beat yourself up if you get into a position and you say, I've made a mistake. But do make sure you act on it quickly.
That's interesting. So obviously with hiring becomes great responsibility. So a next point is they get paid first. So Alan, what do you mean by they get paid first?
Well, this is always really difficult when you're in an early stage business and money is tight. As often is the case. And it's that understanding that when you bring somebody on as an employee and not a founder, it's a different agreement. It's a different relationship where they are guaranteed their money for doing their job. And whether there's enough money to pay everybody or only them, they get paid first. And I know, I'm working with a company now where the founder is struggling with this manfully, where he feels that he is working flat out, but actually everybody else who are employees leaves with the same salary every single month, irrespective of how the business is performed. And he came to the end of the year and he said, I was actually the lowest paid member of staff. Now, of course, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be the business owner, if you're the person who's going to take the benefit of the long term, he's doing that because he believes the long-term benefits will be greater than the short-term pain. But there has to be an understanding that certainly in the short term, you're not the primary point of financial benefit from the business, it's everybody else.
Yes, and I think what I've learned in that is that because my journey mirrors that quite well, in the sense that I got paid hardly anything in the first couple of years. But the point being is that you're building up to something which will be big in the long run, and there has to be a clear path for you to earn. So one of the things that's been very important with our board is to ensure that I'm on a path to getting paid what I would get paid in market rates. I mean, obviously we're not close to that yet, but there's always that thing.
I think this is one of the sort of key entrepreneurial characteristics that one needs to be able to grasp, which is, I'm not in this for the short term. That I know why I'm doing it, and there may well, and not always, some businesses fly from day one and are generating large amounts of cash, and yeah, they're getting paid first, and I get to keep everything left over, and there's loads of it. But I think it's much more common, and certainly in the early stages, that money is tight and one is having to give, but fully on that understanding that you will gain in the longer term. And remember, it's not all about money. A lot of people start up businesses with aspirations that go way, way, way beyond being the highest paid member of staff or building up a big equity stake. So it may well be that you simply love what you're doing or it allows you to indulge your passion. That's really important as well.
Yeah, I think so. But also, you can't be a saint, right? I mean, this is being an entrepreneur. Yes, you got to love what you're doing, and you're in it for the long term. But you can't be spending 5 years eating, baked beans and crackers. That's not the whole point of starting the business. The whole point of starting business is creating value for yourself and for your customers and for shareholders or whatever it is, whatever stakeholders that you have. And I think you've got to, if you are in a situation, maybe I don't know the person that you talked about actual situation, but if you're in a situation where you feel that other people are getting paid, well, do something about it, right? You've got to come up with a plan to get yourself paid, because if you cannot keep running a business where you resent your employees.
Well, that's a whole other conversation that we will have as part of this, which is about long-term strategy and understanding the route map to where you get to, and understanding where the painful slogs up the long hill will be, and then the beautiful pastures that you'll get to spend time in as well. So next up for me, in terms of things you need to know about hiring, is to be really, really clear on what your selection criteria are. And what I mean by this is, I think it usually falls into 3 criteria that one picks under. And one is competency. This person knows stuff that my business needs to know, and I'm going to hire them because I have that knowledge base within the business. The next criteria is, this person is going to offer great opportunity to grow and develop and become really valuable to my business. And the third area, which I used to kind of discount till a chairman I worked with said, who developed 2 hugely successful £100 million businesses, said, Alan, this is my number 1 criteria when I hire someone. And that is all about people fit. And do I like this person? And when the going gets tough, will I be glad to be in a room with them trying to win the battle. So, I think arguably it's a mix of all three, but one needs to be really clear when you're hiring. Is it because they're just going to be the missing piece of the jigsaw to straight in and solve that problem? Do they have the skills? Is it that this is somebody that can grow with the business, but the real value will come further down the line? Or is this just about having someone by your shoulder that you know that you like and can rely on, and between you, you'll find your way through?
And I think this goes back to point number 2, which is about knowing your selection. Being honest about your needs, right? So once you understand what it is that you really need, you've got to be very tight on those selection criteria. So I think, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's much more I can add to that. So the 8th point that we have is one of mine, is learn how to fire. And I think that's
a bit, so you're only just hiring them.
Yeah, but you also have to really understand how you need to get rid of them. Because obviously, as with that example of the lady who was there for 12 weeks, if it's not working out, you've got to really understand, how do I get this person out of my company? And you can't be forever extending them, giving them, the ability to change. Oh, I'm sure you'll do better. I'm sure you can improve. No, you've got to sit there and say, this person's not working out, move on, get rid of them. And I think there's a few facets to it, right? Learning how to get rid of someone fire someone. I know it sounds quite brutal, but is an art in itself. But also there's the whole legal mechanisms. So you've got to understand what's the right way, what's the right process in order to remove someone from the business, because you've got to know this before you start hiring. Because if that person it doesn't work out, you've got to quickly be able to put that process into place and remove them.
How many, in your experience of people who left your business, how many left under good, were a good leaver, and how many were bad leavers? So what I mean by that is, how many when you left were you able to shake hands with and wish good luck, and how many left with the security guard showing them the front door?
I think it's very few that have left on bad terms, and the ones who tend to leave on bad terms burn the bridge themselves, right? They've done it's not us burning that bridge, it's them burning the bridge. There are some crazy stories I could tell you of the days that we were scaling up at Aztec, and I think anyone who was in that business listening to this will know them. But all of those were down to that actual individual and doing just some of the weirdest things in order to get themselves fired. It was just very odd. And
you've just covered exactly the point that I was hoping you were going to make, which is I can't off the top of my head remember ever anybody that has been escorted off the premises. Sure, some of them it was quite upsetting, but the vast majority, including the one that caused me the greatest amount of angst, who actually said, when I said, look, it's time to go our own ways, I just don't, there isn't a future, they said, thank you, because I should have left a long time ago.
Mm.
And I had sleepless nights over that. So I think there's a great learning in there that, sure, be prepared for the bad lever. But the good news is it seldom happens. And when it does, you pretty much be guaranteed that they brought it on themselves.
Definitely. And I think the other thing I would state there is that I do remember one bad lever. I remember the CEO being very upset about that person, but my attitude was good riddance, really. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, to be honest, because there was competitors and all this kind of stuff were involved. And okay, it happened. Deal with it, move on. And I think that's the key. So number 9, understand the admin. So this is the boring bit, isn't it, Alan?
This is, it may be boring, but it's absolutely essential. Because this is how you avoid problems further down the line. And as a young, early stage, vibrant business, the last thing you need is to find yourself in a position where you're having to spend time solving problems that you could have solved much earlier on in the business. And in terms of understanding admin around hiring, have a look at the gov.co.uk or gov.uk website. There's a brilliant guide on there. But this is about making sure that your business is set up with PAYE, that you're deducting the right amounts of tax and paying the right amount of national insurance, that you've got a contract of employment with your hire, that you've got the correct processes in place around things like grievance, holiday pay, all of that good stuff. It's not actually that hard, because most of it is templated. But if you don't have it in place, it's not in place. So you then end up with it, well, I thought this and I thought that, rather than being able to say, well, if you look at your contract employment, it's written in black and white. How many days holiday, how many days full sick pay, standard sick pay, all of those good things.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's not only it's not only understand the admin, but don't underestimate the admin, and don't feel that you can backfill the processes. So again, one of the big lessons I've learned at Aztec, which unfortunately I learned, but I didn't implement in this current company, is that once you start hiring and you start growing, it's the hardest thing in the world is start backfilling some of the processes and the policies and the procedures. It just doesn't work.
You're then in a negotiation. Well, we don't have a contract. Well, I know you're working here. I know you're doing a good job. Let's agree to the terms of your contract.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like that, and I'm not agreeing to it. Well, but you need to. No, I don't. Well, let's work on. It goes on. I've got a company that's doing that right now. They've got 23 members of staff they're trying to retrofit a contract with, and it's been going on for 2 years because it's so painful.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I think that, it's something that if you're a small startup and you've got like a small core of people and you think it's not necessarily because you all know each other, when that additional outsider comes in, it really it does become like the most necessary thing to have. I'll give you an example that what we went through. We're hiring some people in India at the moment, and we got asked the simple questions like, what holidays are you going to give people? So not only like what bank holidays are they going to get, but also what holiday leave. And for me and the rest of the guys from the West, we're like, okay, it's simple. They're going to get X number of days. And then we're being told by our HR guys in India, goes, no, it doesn't work like that. And we're like, what? It doesn't work like that. So you have to spend like a couple of hours of your life then talking about holidays, which is not something you'd expect to do, but it's very necessary because then suddenly everyone's asking about it and everyone has that expectation, right? That you're hiring.
Yeah.
If you're not prepared for that and not prepared to answer those questions, you look like an idiot, really.
Absolutely. And that leads us into the final point, which is once you have your admin in place, that should hopefully cover off most of this. But remember that the moment you hire someone, you're obliged to pay sick pay, maternity pay, national insurance, all of these other things that come along with having pension payments, all come along with having members of staff. So just, again, it's not hard. Just make sure you've done your research and establish your policies so you know where you stand on these obligations.
And I think this is one of the most important ones for you as a founder / entrepreneur, in the sense that it's for you to understand what kind of leader you want to be, right? So as you talk about maternity pay, sick pay, those kinds of things, but even training and career development and coaching for your staff, these are the things that you want to give. And because ultimately these are people who are going to work for you, and hopefully you want them to work for you for quite a long time, and you want them to be able to grow and to develop under your wardship, right? Under your stewardship. And so you've got to understand, what are your obligations going to be? What kind of leader do you want to be? What do you want to offer your staff?
Super. So, hiring staff is an inevitable fact of any growing business. And it is usually, for those that haven't done it before, one of the most stressful early stage things we have to do. Hopefully those top 10 hints give you some practical, pragmatic advice on areas you need to cover. So thanks for joining us for this episode, and we look forward to you next time on the Real World Entrepreneurship Podcast.
Thank you very much.